Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Tales from the Fandom. Today, I am joined by someone that I happened to stumble across on the Twitterverse, loved her content, and reached out to ask her to come and join me for a podcast episode. She willingly said yes, and so she is here today. I am joined by Jireh. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. I'm super excited to have you. I stumbled across you on Twitter, I think through one of your cosplay photos that a mutual friend of ours had liked and commented on. And I was like, oh, I love it. I love it. And I went through because I always got to background check my people that I invite on to make sure that there's no craziness later on.
Oh, no.
Like, in the timelines or in the Instagram posts. And I was like, okay, she's good.
Oh my goodness.
But I'm excited to have you today, Jireh.
Thank you so much.
The photo that I saw was of you as Rose Tico from the newest Star Wars trilogy, and that's obviously the first fandom that I kind of want to lead in and jump in with. So for you, how did you first get into Star Wars?
I prior to The Force Awakens, I had not seen a single Star Wars movie, which was ridiculous because I was a big nerd, and well, I am still a big nerd, and it's very much my thing. I distinctly remember a friend asking me, like, "Have you seen the Star Wars movies?" And I was like, "No, there's too many of them. I probably will never watch them." But yeah, but then The Force Awakens was announced, and I saw the cast list, and I was kind of impressed by, like the female lead, and then they have a black actor, and then they have a Latino actor, and I was like, maybe I can, ease my way into it. I fell headfirst into into it. So yeah, before The Force Awakens, not a single one, and then I was like, okay, I'll try to watch everything before the movie comes out, and yeah, that's what happened. It was The Force Awakens. I mean,
it's
my gateway.
It's always interesting to find out how people get into the Star Wars fandom. I have had guests on who got into it through Phantom Menace.
Really? Nice.
I've had people get into it through the cartoon series like Clone Wars or Rebels. It's so fascinating because Star Wars has that reach across TV and movies and books and comics that at times I find it's like, how did you miss it? But at the same time, I can see where people come from, and Star Wars just isn't on their radar, isn't their thing. They don't have people to be like, hey, come watch this movie with me. But I love it. And the casting was phenomenal when that movie was announced, and I was definitely super psyched for what they promoted and trailered, and I tried to have that whole, I'm not going to watch any trailers until I see the movie, and that lasted all of like a month, and then I said, you know what, forget it. I can't avoid it.
I think it was more like a lot of people I know who watch Star Wars, like, their parents watched it, and then they grew up watching it. My parents are not big on like popular media, so I didn't grow up with it. And also because it's so ubiquitous, all the spoilers are out there already. Everyone knows what Star Wars is. Everyone knows the basic beats, even in jokes. Like I actually watched Spaceballs before I ever seen a single Star Wars movie, and I still got a lot of the references just because it's, everyone knows what Star Wars is. But, like I said, seeing the cast list and the diversity that they were willing to inject in it, I was like, maybe this could be something that I enjoy. So, yeah.
I have a friend in I had a friend in high school who saw Spaceballs before Star Wars and said, "Why is Star Wars ripping off Spaceballs?"
Oh no! Oh no!
And that was an interesting conversation to have.
That's so funny.
Now, for you, after you saw The Force Awakens, did you go back and watch the other movies, or did you just kind of say like, this is my thing here, is this new part of the franchise?
I I watched I didn't actually watch The Force Awakens right when it came out. I watched it like a couple of months later. So I had time to watch the other movies that came out before I saw the actual
Okay.
before I saw The Force Awakens. So I had some background. Like when Kylo Ren appeared, I was like, oh, I know who Han and Leia are and why his different kind of ideology goes against theirs. So there was context.
Gotcha. Okay, so you were up to date by the time Force Awakens came out.
As up to date as you can be without watching Clone Wars and Rebels.
Yeah, that is one thing. I still have not watched Rebels and Clone Wars, obviously, with what they just did with the last season, having just completed a month or so ago, is definitely a like, okay, Clone Wars was here, and then it ended, and then it's like, okay, it's back, and now it's over again.
Yeah, it's a lot of content, and then there's books and comics, and I haven't gotten into the books yet, besides the novelizations, and then even that is slightly different than the actual movies that came out, so it's a little confusing sometimes.
Yeah, I totally understand. I used to read all of the books that came out for Star Wars, and then once Disney took it over, I
Oh
don't
no.
think I have read any of the recent Disney stuff, except for one that focused on Padme, that was by E.K. Johnston.
Ah,
And I was like, because I love Padme from the prequel series, and it's like, dang, I want more of her.
Padme's great, and I loved her in Clone Wars as well. Like I like how they expanded on her character there.
Absolutely. Now, for this new franchise, we had a whole bunch of new characters come in. Did you have any favorites, or do you have like favorites across like the whole Star Wars franchise?
Like for the new franchise, I honestly adore every single one of them. I always like joke on the internet about like them being my children. I love all of them, but I'm particularly attached to Rose and Kylo Ren, Ben Solo. So I'm particularly really attached to those. But like I said, I love all of them. Will defend them all with my life.
What is it about Kylo that draws you to his character? Because of the new cast, of the new characters in this series, there's definitely a lot of split feelings on a number of them, and one of those is Kylo, where the fandom is very split on if they like him, if they don't like him. So what's your draw to him?
It's definitely the conflict in him. Like, when I first watched The Force Awakens, I was like, oh, villain, generic villain. And then even from his like first scene where Lor Santeca kind of calls him out on like, oh, you can't like deny, the truth that is your family. And I was like, ooh, might be something there. And then he has a scene where he's like, I feel the call to the light. And I was like, oh, this is not your typical like one-dimensional villain who's just hell-bent on destroying everything. He actually feels some conflict. He's someone who's drawn to the light, but he's trying so hard to be a bad person. Like even a lot of people don't like him because he killed Han Solo, and people idolize Han Solo, so they're like, he killed Han, how can you like him? But to me, I'm more focusing on the fact that even though he felt like he had to do that, and he did it, he he wasn't satisfied by it. He wasn't happy by what he did. Like even Snoke says, like, it made you weak. It broke you. And I was like, that's a really, really complex character that I can that I can adopt. He's my child now.
How did you like his progression through through Last Jedi and then Rise of Skywalker?
I loved him in The Last Jedi. I mean, everyone knows The Last Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, but I really like the whole kind of Rashomon thing that they had going on in that movie, where who is a more reliable narrator, or who's telling the truth? Like, is it Luke? Is it Kylo? You know, their perspectives were different. So what really happened? But I think I even though he ended in like a bad kind of air quotes bad position in The Last Jedi, I really don't agree with what people were saying that like, oh, he ended up like the definite big bad for the last movie because oh, he said he's gonna kill the Last Jedi or whatever. Because even after all his like posturing, he ended up kneeling on the floor, holding his father's die in his hand, looking up at Rey, all sad. And I'm like, that's not the face of a villain who's triumphant, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I maybe I'm like attributing a lot to Adam Driver's acting, but just the whole, you know, like he started hellbent on destroying everything, on ruling the galaxy. And then he develops a connection, a very sincere connection with his enemy. And then, you know, through some misguided notion of like truly destroying everything, like not even the organization that he's with, he thought that he could get her to join him, and then that will make, you know, and he's like, well, this is a kind of a, sorry, I'm trying to find the word.
Oh, it's okay.
Like, you know, he's saying, this is a kindred spirit. If we're together, then maybe this thing that I thought would make me happy will make us both happy, and we can rule the galaxy together and screw everything else. But because, you know, Rey is of a different, well, Rey is a kindred spirit, but she also, she understands the world differently.
I've got some follow-up questions, but I want to make sure that we talk about the other character that you had mentioned, which is Rose Tico, who shows up in The Last Jedi.
Yes.
What was the draw for this character who, you know, it wasn't in The Force Awakens and shows up kind of, you know, similarly to like in Empire Strikes Back, we get additional characters, and we get additional characters in the second and third movies with regards to the prequels as well. What was it about Rose that was like, I love Rose?
Well, you know, obviously the initial draw was that she's an Asian character, the first Asian character to be, you know, to be a major part of the film. And it was funny because when they released the promotional photos for Entertainment Weekly, I had friends texting me the the cover and was like, she looks like you. Because I used to have, when I was a little younger, I used to have the blunt bangs. Like that was my standard, that was my fashion style, whatever. So they're like, she looks like you. And I even tweeted about it. I was like, she's Asian, she has blunt bangs, and she has a round face. I'm like, I'll probably dress up as her sometime. And I did. And I was like, I did. But I absolutely loved her in the film. She is the heart of that film. She's she represents the heart of Star Wars itself, you know? And the fact that she was just a regular person, she's not a Force user. She's not a trained soldier. She's not a legacy child. She's not a pilot. She's not like because Poe isn't just a pilot. Poe is a son of rebels. So he's been in this for a while. His parents have been in this. Rose was just someone who was negatively, her family was negatively affected by the war, and she thought, I'm going to do something about it. I'll help, in any way I can. And, she's an engineer. She's just a regular person. But when when the situation called for it, she was able to, stand up to the challenge and say, okay, I'm just an engineer, but we need to go to this other ship. We need to go to this other planet. No one else is going to do it, so I'm gonna. And that's really amazing to me, It shows that regular people can make a difference. You don't have to have special powers. You don't have to have amazing special skills. If you have the heart and the courage and the strength of conviction, you can make a difference.
Exactly. And I really dug Rose's character in The Last Jedi. She was one of those characters where she pops on the screen and you're just, at least for me, it was definitely, this is really like a breath of fresh air because, and it's exactly how you lay down. Like, this character is not the fighter pilot, the Jedi, the lead. It's more of, this is just a person who is an engineer working on a ship in this rebellion and just doing what she's supposed to do, but has the courage to take that next step to go forward for the cause, regardless of what she may want to do. Like, she's taking that step for the betterment of everyone.
Yeah, and she represents the common people. I know people, a lot of fans didn't like Canto Bight because whatever, pacing's weird, it's pointless. But I personally think that the Canto Bight is something that you can't cut out from that film because it's very important. It shows that evil is not just, bad force users. It's not some, weird mystical kind of cosmic force. It's also war profiteers. It's like it's capitalism. It's people who are trying to take advantage of other people's oppression. And Rose was the one to point that out. And she was a very important part in Finn kind of developing that like true allegiance to the rebellion. Because he wasn't into it. He just wanted to go away and, go somewhere else with his friend, with Rey. But Rose showing him that there are actual evils that need to be defeated, that was important in his development. So that, and the fact that she was, she saved Finn's life. People hate that part too. They're like, why wouldn't she let him sacrifice himself? I'm like, because that's not what's important in the grand scheme of things. She knows that the sacrifice would be pointless. Mm-hmm. It would just be losing a life of someone that's, it would just be the loss of a life that's important to her for no reason. And she wasn't going to stand up for that. She's like, no, screw that. If we're gonna, for her, it's like, if we're gonna fight and if it looks like we're losing anyway, I'm not willing to waste this life. So, and like, it's saving what we love, and it's saving the people who are important to us. It doesn't mean not fighting. It means like having a different reason for fighting. And that's Rose. That's why I keep saying she's the heart of Star Wars. That's what Star Wars is. Mm-hmm. It's not just like random violence for no reason. It's fighting for what you love.
Absolutely. And it's definitely with her character of like, why would you just throw your life, like, you throw your life away? This, your one little thing is not going to do anything to that big giant cannon that they have. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the point? Like, you can live and fight another day. And that's probably what a lot of people need to take away from that, is that, why do that? Why do that when you can regroup and come back again and keep mm-hmm. coming back until, maybe there's a better outcome.
Yeah.
Now, while you were talking about Kylo, you mentioned a thing that you had noted, that The Last Jedi is your favorite Star Wars movie. And I would love to hear your explanation for it, because I will preface this by saying the first time that I saw it, I did not like The Last Jedi. And it wasn't for like any of it just felt like the pacing was weird. Um it didn't seem to like match up. However, once I was able to watch it in my house, like streaming it and just getting to like take time with it after a number of viewings, I really love what
Hmm.
Ryan Johnson did with The Last Jedi. Now, I will say that whoever was in charge of doing the trilogy should have thought out what they wanted to do and had like, the things planned regardless of who was directing or writing it, like, all come together and be like, hey, as a team, this is what we're going forward with, instead of, what they did after Last Jedi with Rise of Skywalker.
Hmm.
But that's neither here nor there. I eventually have fallen in love with The Last Jedi. I find it, of the three sequel movies, I find it as the strongest one. And I want to hear why you love it.
I oh. I remember doing like an itemized list on how like what I love about The Last Jedi on Twitter like a few months ago. It's a lot. I mean, I love besides the fact that I love the characters. I love the characters already, but I feel like The Last Jedi kind of gave them gave them like showed a different side to their characters, or gave them a little bit more flavor. Like Last Jedi really kind of looked at Rey's capacity for anger and how she kind of, she kind of comes close to the dark side without ever fully going there. And I adore that because, I'm very much of, the firm belief that the Jedi kind of suck. They suck with, with the whole, temper your emotions all the time. And I'm just like, no, it's not how people work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's not how people work. I mean, people can be angry and not be evil at the same time. So can calm down, Jedi. And Rey is like that. She's a good person. She's a very compassionate soul, but she also has righteous anger in her. And I mean, and like I said, like rightfully, because she grew up in such a harsh kind of in harsh conditions in a harsh world, but she never let that, make her evil. But so I was like, it's important to show characters like that, and it's important to show that even with anger inside you, you can still be a good person. And just as, kind of on the flip side, Kylo Ren, who's trying so hard to be a bad person, he's doing all the bad things, and he's accountable for all the bad things that he's doing. But there's also a pull to the light for him, and I liked Poe Dameron, who's who is a good person, but he also has a propensity for cockiness and being smug. And Finn, who you also know is a good person, but his priorities are on kind of a different level on than the rest of the characters. And it makes sense. I mean, why would he be... honestly, that's why I was like, I really like that The Last Jedi showed kind of like a logical next step for him. He was a stormtrooper. He defected because he saw one of his brothers get shot down. But that doesn't mean that it makes sense for him to just suddenly be a hero in the rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, who shot his friend? It was Poe. Poe shot his friend. So there needs to be some sort of a next step before he becomes a rebellion hero, and that was The Last Jedi, basically. And I love everything about Rose Tico. So, and I loved Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. I think that might be one of my favorite depictions of Luke, because it's not even that it goes against the image of heroic Luke. It's just that it's logical.
Mm-hmm.
It's logical for him to kind of he became a Jedi Master, and he did something He did something that was that would weigh so heavily on him that he would rather be disconnected from everything else. Kind of like people compare his arc in The Last Jedi as like a kind of a depression arc, in the middle age depression arc kind of thing. And I was like, I see that. You can't keep being this awesome super hero Jedi master when you've done something that's not just kind of affected his family in a negative way. It also kind of makes him question what his beliefs are as a Jedi. He's like, I drove my nephew into the darkness. I mean, it's not his fault, but his moment of weakness caused someone to fully go into the dark, and it's like he's not going to be amazing superhero Luke after that. Makes sense. I mean, for him to isolate himself on an island. So it's like I love that. I love that. And I mean, not to rail on, I will, but I won't. Not to rail on the Rise of Skywalker, but his whole point about the Jedi having to evolve is like spot on. They cannot stay the same way. If it's just unrealistic. His whole point about the Jedi basically making like mistakes that plunge the world into war. Yeah, basically, yeah. Yeah, he makes really amazing points on that. I love Leia. When I first watched the movie, I was kind of like, this is so goofy when, she was reaching out with the Force and she was flying like Mary Poppins through the sky, or through space. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it's Leia. She's gonna do it. She's like, and I love that, I think that scene in the novelization, she said, like, there was like a line in there about like her thoughts when she was floating through space about to die, and she was like something like hell, like this is not gonna happen to me. I'm Leia. So she just reaches out with the Force, and I like that that's the show of Force that she did. I'm not very thrilled about Jedi Leia. I mean, I love seeing women with swords, but I think Leia's force powers are more like that, more kind of emotion based, more of a non-physical show of Force.
Right.
Yeah. I love Paige Tico, who's regrettably only on screen for a few minutes, but she made such an impact, not just on the movie, but I feel like in the world of Star Wars itself. And I feel like that's like a hell of a way to kind of to like showcase a side character. Mm-hmm. In a few minutes, you saw what was important to her, what was, like the things that she stood up for. And I'm just like, that's an amazing character. But I feel like I'm not like I'm trying not to just do the itemized list again, but so I'm gonna try to do it in broad strokes. I loved the Stable Kids. Like I said, I love Canto Bight, and I already mentioned what I loved about Canto Bight, so I'm not gonna do that again. But I also like the destruction that comes after that. I like the thrashing of Canto Bight. It's very cathartic. And, it's like people first before property. I really, really, really love the scenes with Kylo and Rey. I love that idea of people in opposing sides of a war finding a connection, something bigger than, just other things, really, and still being able to connect and say like you're not alone. That was a big thing to me, to be for two like lonely people to be able to look at each other and say like you're not alone. Like there's a way out from the darkness, from the evil, and having someone who's compassionate enough to tell you that you're not suffering alone, that's like it's major.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, besides, I'm sorry, I'm just like I could talk about The Last Jedi for like 3 hours with like the length of the movie, but you can have bathroom breaks. But I really also really love the theme of failure in the movie. A lot of people say, "Oh, everything they did in that movie is pointless because they just end up failing every time." And I'm like, that's the point. You can't always succeed in the things you do. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You know,
Absolutely.
that's why Yoda was there. That's why Yoda was there. Well, no, he's actually I feel like I don't even know what Yoda was saying when he was like, "There's no try." I'm just like, well, these people tried their best, and that was enough. You know, they did their best, and they still affected the world in positive ways. But the whole thing of yeah, look, failure is our greatest teacher. Like I said, doesn't mean you shouldn't try, and it doesn't mean that you should stop trying. You know, and that's like really profound for me. I feel like there's so much importance put on succeeding the first time or just plain succeeding, and I like that they were saying that the trying itself is what's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I get it. I get what you're saying. We've come to the conclusion now of the sequel trilogy, and they have, or Disney has said, you know, we're going to have some new movies coming out, and
Yeah.
just out of curiosity, like, what would you love to see? Like, if they were like, Jireh, give us a movie. What movie do you want to see in the Star Wars universe?
I'm boring. I'd probably give some answer like anything that is not related to any character that we've seen before, because I think that was a big misstep in the sequel trilogy. Like, I get why they did it, and I'm one of those people who gets excited when I see a face that I know, but I think that was a big misstep for it. It's part of why I did not enjoy the last movie as much, is because I felt like they put too much importance into, hey, look at all these characters that you love. They're all here again for no reason at all. Like it was, yeah, like I feel like it wasn't justified. They brought, you know, people back that I'm just kind of like, oh, I thought there was a point to this, but there wasn't. So I just really like to see new concepts. I feel like I enjoyed The Mandalorian the first season a lot because it was exactly that. It was like, these are just new characters for you to fall in love with, and they're set in the same universe. So there's like, you know, there's offhand references to things that might be going on, but in general, they're you know, they're different. They're doing something else, and I like it when worlds are bigger instead of smaller. So I would like to see that. In particular, like concept, as far as concepts, I don't know, because there's so many projects that they've announced are coming out, and so far I have not been like super excited about any single one of them. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, but maybe it's just me like losing faith or whatever. But hey, maybe someone more creative than me has a like a better concept that I might get excited about.
I can respect that answer, and it is interesting with what they have announced, and besides the continuation of The Mandalorian with, you know, season 2 this year, I'm not really like overwhelmed by like, I need to go read this or see this, and I'm kind of just going to wait and see with what they do with the properties. But I do hope like you said, they kind of get away from and I know that they've talked about it, like, okay, we're done with like the Skywalkers and that's it. Like, but I need you guys to move away from a lot of it. Just go.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even like, like the whole cast announcements for The Mandalorian, like everyone's like Boba Fett is coming back, maybe Ahsoka's gonna be there, and I'm just like, you guys, can we have new characters? But like I said, I'm one of those like people who's still gonna be excited to see Ahsoka live action, but I'm like, new characters, please. I'm begging.
Now, I know that we have gone on about Star Wars a lot longer than normal, but that is okay because...
Like 30 minutes of it is probably me trying to find the words to say how much I love Kylo Ren. Deserves better, by the way.
I agree. But I do want to talk about another space franchise that you are into, which I desperately want to watch at some point. Please let me watch it sometime this year. Is the Expanse?
Yes. Oh gosh, I adore the Expanse. I think I've seen it. I've seen it 4 times all the way through now. I love that show so much. I love it. I truly do.
How did you get into the show? Because it's not a show that kind of like stands out for a lot of people. I know that I didn't hear about it until I think maybe the 2nd season, and then I was like, oh, that show sounds like it's my show. Like, that's a show for me.
I didn't get to watch it until it was on Amazon Prime. I'm a person who just watches like everything space related. Like I've seen like the more obscure like space / sci-fi like Canadian TV shows on Netflix that no one else has seen. So I think The Expanse was just something that I came across, and then I started watching it and I was like, this is amazing. Why are people not talking about this? Yeah, it's very good. I think it's just like criminally underrated. I remember going to AwesomeCon last year. Yeah, like I think it was last year. I dressed up as one of the characters in the first season, and literally like 2 people recognized me, and the rest were just like, your costume looks cool, but I don't know where it's from. Which I took as an opportunity to kind of preach the word about The Expanse.
And what is the good word of The Expanse? Why should people watch it?
I think The Expanse, honestly, is like one of the best sci-fi TV shows like ever. It has a pretty diverse cast, and not just like a diversity for diversity's sake. Like they're all important and they all have a story. Not one of them is like side characters. Like they're all main characters. It's really an ensemble cast. And it has like a really interesting premise of Earth and Mars being in a war, and the Belters, who are the working class, being caught in between the wars. And like I keep saying that it's well, no, I remember saying it's like, oh, this would be a good like tabletop RPG like premise, and then I realized that it was actually a tabletop RPG before it was books, before it was a TV show. So that was the concept. It was an RPG, and then they made it into books, and then they made it into a TV show. So, but I really, really loved it because I feel like it shows more nuance than other sci-fi movies or TV shows. They have really, really good discussions on morality, discussions on like not just who's right or who's wrong. It's also like what happens when what happens to the people who are caught in between. And that's like, it's like I said, like that's the part that I liked about Canto Bight, but this is like if the Candle Bite is like an entire TV show, because they show the common folk, like the plight of the common folk without without making it like an issue of like white saviorism. It's like, oh, this like they call that out too. You know, they're like, who are you to speak for us? You're not even one of us.
Right.
Yeah, and then they show factions within, and they show like factions within who are for the good of the people, or are they really just taking advantage of the people? Like it's a very nuanced look about all of that, and you don't really see that in a lot of TV shows. Like, I don't know, something like Game of Thrones, where they talk about the common folk, but they're really more focused on the families and the aristocrats and all that. This is a show for the small people, you know. So I really like that, and it's very well produced, even when it wasn't on Amazon, because I think it was on Sci-Fi before for like 2 seasons, and then they canceled it, or 3 seasons or something, and then they canceled it, and people got mad. People on the internet got so mad they did petitions, and Amazon Prime was like, hey, maybe we can get money off of this. And it was really well produced, even when it was on Sci-Fi. Like the effects were amazing. Yeah. But it's just a really good story. Like once you find out, like when you watch it, once you find out, like, I don't know, I feel like there's like a particular episode once it starts clicking that it's something different. Like this show isn't like other shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, but I don't want to spoil it because I want you to watch it. I want everyone to watch this show.
For people that are watching The Expanse, like when I start watching it, like which character should I look for? Which, like, who is your favorite that you should be like, you need to watch that one? Like, that's the person.
Oh my god. Oh my god. I love all of them for different reasons. Like there's, you know, I mean, there's the main character who's obviously a white dude, but I think the other characters in his crew are also like amazing. Like there's Naomi, who's I think she's an engineer. I think that's her main job. I think she's an engineer because she's really like the boss. And I love her because she's one of those, like, she's fierce, but she's still very compassionate. And a lot of in other seasons, she not clashes because they're friends, but she has like really kind of profound kind of she has really like deep talks with another character who's basically like her, like, you know, they came from the same background and all that, but they have really deep talks about what the right thing is, you know. And she's kind of the heart of the, I'm drawn to the hearts of TV shows and movies apparently, but but I also like Amos because he's the muscle of the group, but he's a very complex muscle.
He's like
okay.
the brain.
Yes,
He's
but
the
I
heart.
can't, you know, but I keep focusing on the crew, but because it's a war between Mars and Earth, there is some politics involved. And the head of the UN on Earth is Avasarala, Christian Avasarala, and she's amazing. She is one of those. Have you watched The Witcher?
Yes.
She's like the queen, where she's just like completely unapologetic, and she's abrasive, but she's not a bad person.
Right.
She just doesn't care about people who might hate her. And I love that. Like, get me a more abrasive woman. I know people hate that, but I'm like, well, women aren't just one thing. So I like that. Yeah, watch out for Bobby Draper. She is played by Frankie Adams, who is a Samoan actress, and she's like she's a soldier for Mars. You know, she's tough as nails. But I really, really like her, and I really like the development that her character goes through in that show. There's just so many, like, and the thing is, like, there's so many great female characters in that show, and they're all different from each other, which is not something that you'll find in a lot of TV shows.
That is one thing that I do like, especially with ensemble character, like ensemble shows or ensemble movies, is when they don't have that overlap, when the characters are so wildly different, where you can be like, okay, like each one of them is a great character, but then they all work together, but they're so different.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
I can't wait to watch that show. I don't know why I haven't watched it. Actually, I do know why I haven't watched it, is because my wife has the Amazon Prime account,
Mm-hmm.
but I can't watch it under my name because I can just get the free shipping when I'm logged in, so I'd have to log in as her to watch it on my computer. And she doesn't want to watch sci-fi shows with me, which makes
oh no, that's all right. But once you watch it, I hope you enjoy it. A lot of the picture that you saw probably was taken by a friend, a photographer friend that I made because of our mutual love for The Expanse. Yeah, like I went to a con where the woman who plays Naomi, her name is Dominic Tipper. She was a guest. And she was a guest. So I was like, oh, I'll dress up as just this character from her show. By the way, one of the best like panels I've been to, because she moderated her own panel, and it was great because the people there were also big fans of this show, and they didn't have like the typical kind of inane questions that actors probably hear at every con. Yeah, they had like questions about morality in the show. I was like, this is amazing. So we got a lot of like very, very complex discussion on those things, and I was like, this is the best panel ever. Like, but there's but there's also like fun facts and fun stories about the other cast members sandwiched in it. But I was like, oh, this is the meatiest panel ever. But so I went there, and after the con, my friend now like messages me and was like, I saw you at the con. I got to my car and realized who you were dressed up as. We have to meet up at the next con. So now, we're friends and we hang out all the time, and he takes pictures of me because he's amazing. But yeah, it was all because of The Expanse.
That's really cool. And when I watch the show, I'll be like tweeting about it and make sure that everyone knows how cool it is.
Awesome. I actually wore the same costume to like MagFest this year, January, for like 4 hours. More people recognize me than like that 4 hours than an entire day at AwesomeCon last year. So I was like, okay, at least people are watching it now. I was like, okay, more people are watching it. This is good.
Yay.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the community is really good too. I think it's not very fandom-y.
Okay. We'll have to make it more fandom-y.
It's not like when I say it's not fandom-y, it's like in a good way, because, well, maybe I'm just exposed to a different side of it. Because I'm only on the costuming side of it, and everyone's really helpful in that regard. Like, it's just, hey, I made this font for this costume, for like a tag or like a name patch on this costume. Here, have it for free.
Besides Star Wars and besides The Expanse, another fandom that you're into is actually listening to podcasts.
Does that count as a fandom? Well, I guess they're sub-fandoms. So yes, I am very much into listening to podcasts.
And specifically, you pointed out a couple that are tabletop role-playing, actual play podcasts.
Yeah, I mean, it started with comedy podcasts. Like the first actual play tabletop podcast that I listened to was The Adventure Zone, because I am a very big fan of the McElroy brothers. Because I've been listening to their other comedy podcast. But I really, really enjoyed the Adventure Zone because of the storytelling aspect of it. And also because they play with their dad. So, yeah, so it's my brother, and me, and their dad. So, and they've had, I think they're currently on their third long form campaign. The first campaign is the most popular one. It's the Balance arc, and it's standard D&D, but it's the way they kind of focused on the storytelling aspect versus, combat and D&D rules. It's, I think it's actually, I'm not going to say that they're the first to do it, but the fact that it gotten so popular that they actually have a continuing like graphic novel for every for every section in their first campaign, their first, every arc in their first campaign, like that's something. People really latched onto this, and they also have an upcoming animated TV show, I believe, that got picked up by NBC. Yes,
I think so, for like that new streaming platform that they're doing.
Oh yeah, Peacock or something.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm like, people love this. I go to the live show sometime, and it's ridiculous. It's like going to a concert.
So you got in through the comedy, and then you stuck with it, and then have you branched out to other podcasts? Because I know as a person in that like tabletop role playing community, there is a ton of actual play podcasts out there.
Oh yeah, I mean, and I've listened to. I mean, the reason I got into the Adventure Zone is because I listened to all the podcasts that McElroy Brothers did. But then once you're done with that, you start looking for other things, right?
That's right.
Yeah, and I got into a campaign podcast because they've had two campaigns now. The first one is a Star Wars campaign, actually. They call it Campaign Minok because that's the ship, the ship that the players were in. It was a Star Wars Edge of the Empire campaign, and it was super good and super funny.
Mm-hmm.
But then when that came to a close, they decided to do another campaign. But this one is more I don't want to say experimental, but it's different in the sense that the game system that they're using is modified. I think they're using a modified version of the Genesis system, and then the world that they're in it's the world that it's called Campaign Skyjacks, and I keep saying it's Sky Pirates, but it's really more than that. It's more like a folksy kind of campaign, and the setting is actually inspired by the music of the Decemberists.
Wow.
Yeah, and they're also using mechanics from a card game called Illimat in it. So there's a lot of like different elements of the game that they incorporate, like different elements from different games and music and other stuff like that they've incorporated in their game that makes it kind of very unique. And once again, the storytelling is amazing, and the actors are like improvisers, so they're very good at they're very good at story, and they're very good actors as well. And the music is amazing. So it's a whole production. It's really, really outstanding.
How do you decide like which actual plays you have dove into, like especially with I'm familiar with campaign through the one shot through one shot. So like, was it with the first campaign, was it because it was like Star Wars, or because of the people doing it, the voices, the story? Like how did you get into them?
I forget how I came across campaign. But I think I stuck it out because it was Star Wars, and then I fell in love with the actors, and that's why I was like, okay, I'm ready for Skyjacks, let's go. Even though they really only kept, the GM, James, and two of the folks from, well, yeah, like they only kept a couple of other folks from the Minoc campaign. It's really, I mean, I've listened to and dropped a lot of other tabletop podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
It's first, I think I'm looking for the quality of storytelling. I like the balance of like comedy and drama. If it's too much drama, If it's too much comedy, I don't have a problem with too much comedy, but like, sometimes some people's brands of comedy is not for me. So then I drop it. I also like, I don't know. I feel like it's more like right now, it's more allegiance towards certain players. Yeah. Like I've also listened to Welcome to it's Warda. They say Welcome to Warda, so I'm just like, oh, it's Welcome to Warda, but it's Warda from the One Shot podcast, One Shot Network as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then so I listened to that. I really enjoyed the first arc that they did, and I got attached to Ali Grauer, to Ali Grauer, who is now in to Ali Grauer and Drew Murziowski, and they're now doing the spin-off of Skyjacks called Campaign Skyjacks Careers Call, which is their more PG-13 campaign, but it's still set in the same world. So I'm listening to that because of them, and also because I love the world. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I've had Allie on the podcast as a guest.
What?
And got to meet her at one of our conventions down here in Orlando. So I'm familiar. I haven't been able to listen to Warda, but I'm familiar with what they were doing with that. And then I know that I've seen mention of Courier's Call a few times, and it's like, dang, I need more time in my life.
Right? There's so many good, amazing podcasts. Like, I need to catch up to Neo Scum too, which is also on the One Shot Network, and I came across it because Mike Migdal was on. Mike Migdal, who's in the cast of Neo Scum, was on one of those bonus episodes for Campaign Minoc. He played a Jawa. He played a Jawa called Binbon, and then I was like, oh, this guy's in this other podcast. I should listen to that too. So now I'm into that podcast as well, and developed allegiance to all the the cast members. So
you pledge allegiance to the cast members
of the podcasts that I
yes. So you love Star Wars, you love The Expanse, you're into listening to some great tabletop role-playing podcasts, and as you mentioned before, you like to cosplay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hobby. I mean, I'm not as prolific as a lot of my other friends, but it's something I like to do.
How did you decide to get into doing cosplay? Because I know everyone has their own path to get into that.
Mm-hmm. Star Wars, of course. The first time I cosplayed was 2016. I've been attending cons since 2014, but always just kind of dressed up in nerd shirts or whatever. But I've always admired other people who go to cons and dress up and represent their favorite characters, but I never really felt kind of a burning kind of urge to dress up as another character until The Force Awakens, and I adored Rey so much that I was like, maybe. But of course, there was that whole thing about I am an Asian person who is not conventionally attractive by what the European Western standards. So it's a whole kind of it's a back and forth with myself. It's like, should you? Like, will you even look okay in it? You know, wait, what if it sucks? What if you suck? What if you hate yourself? And, you know, and like you take pictures in it and you hate yourself, then would it be a waste, you know? But in the end, I was just like, well, everyone's dressed up there anyway. And yeah. And then I was like, well, I can't sew. So nope. But I had a friend who was like, I will help you. So it was like a collaborative effort. She sewed, she did the costumes and I did all the props by hand because I'm a broke college student at the time. So I made a staff that's entirely made out of like objects that we found at her house. So in true scavenger fashion, my Ray staff was like, you know, 2 wooden dowels, and it's literally Dixie cups, like bottle caps, old cords that are lying around, a sponge that I cut up into a sphere shape. Like it's things like that. And I'm still really proud of that staff, by the way. But it's amateur hour cosplay, but I got to the convention. I dressed up as Resistance Ray. I was the only one. Everyone else was like, you know, had the standard, the nice scavenger outfit.
Mm-hmm.
But I was dressed up as my like janky Resistance Ray, and I was like, people were like yelling at me as I was like walking up the stairs, like, I love your costume. That is the best Resistance Ray I've seen. And I'm just like, this is awesome. Why have I not been doing this the whole time? Yeah, and like kids were like tripping over themselves trying to get photos with me. Like, and I'm just like, little old me? What? It's really good. I love it. I love putting smiles into kids' faces. And so I was like, I'll keep doing this. Yeah.
That is awesome. Now, do you have a favorite of what you've done so far? Like, and is it Rose Tico?
Yes. Yes, it's Rose Tico. At first it was my favorite just because I just love representing her. But now it's my favorite because I would never let her die. I would never let I said that I'm never going to retire that costume. Like I'm never going to stop wearing it. If it breaks, I'm going to make another one.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe it's out of spite. It's like fanboys hate her so much that I'm here to be like a one-man army against it. Like screw you guys. Like, and also because I didn't like what they did to her character in The Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
So me still dressing up as the Last Jedi Rose is me kind of standing up against that. Like I'm currently working on The Rise of Skywalker Rose, also out of spite. But I'm never gonna let the Last Jedi Rose die. You know.
I love it.
She has she has like the values that I loved, and that's gonna be the Rose Tico for me. That version of her.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any other characters that you want to do but you just haven't yet, or are on the horizon that you're planning on doing in the future?
It's hard for me to pick a character to cosplay just because, like once again, I'm a short Asian girl, and you know, I don't look the part. So there's a lot of kind of thinking like, oh, can I, you know, am I able to carry this outfit kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
And so far, most of the characters I've cosplayed are Asian and or people of color. Like my Marta Cabrera is also like I'm not saying like I'm proud of it because I made the costume, but I'm like, I love wearing Marta Cabrera just because like what she stands for. But I'm like, oh no, I'm no Ana de Armas. I'm no Ana de Armas. So there's a lot of kind of thought that goes into it. Like I wish I was one of those cosplayers that I'm just like, I think I'll look good in this costume, so I'll wear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's I want to eventually do Huntress from Birds of Prey.
Okay.
definitely not my body type. But I loved her character, so I was like, maybe. I got deep into the Phantom of the Opera recently, so I kind of want to do one of her costumes, one of Christine's costumes.
Right.
I don't know. Like I said, it's a lot of thinking for me, and I'd prefer to keep doing Asian characters just because of our issue with representation in media.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, a lot of Asian characters that are in popular media are East Asians, and then I get a complex about like, oh, I don't look like them, and I'm not saying that cosplay has to be someone that you look like. It's entirely an issue of me. I used to have like extremely low self-confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Cosplay actually helped me get out of that shell. So it's still something that I'm working on. And yeah.
I'm glad to hear at least that cosplay helped you with boosting that self-esteem and lifting you up in that way, because I know that it can be from the people I've talked to, the cosplayers that have been on the podcast previously. It's definitely, it's that, well, I did the cosplay, but then you get the comments, or you get the people on Instagram and on social media being generally rude and not acceptable.
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky that I've, like, for the most part, the comments that I've gotten for Rose are extremely lovely, but I do get the occasional, like, this character sucks, or why would you cosplay as her? And I always tell the story of like when I was joining the Rebel Legion. For my submission photos, I have to like upload it to a hosting site.
Right.
And I'm an idiot and hosted it on Imager and forgot to click private on it. And yeah, within minutes, I got so many comments. I mean, it wasn't like directed like at how I look. It was more like the costume. Although someone did tell me to delete my social media. When that was around the time that Kelly left social media, and I was just like, y'all suck.
Mm-hmm.
Deleted that right quick. But it was one of those things where it's like, this sucks, man. This sucks. And I have gotten a few, this character is the worst character in the world, but you look good. And I'm just like, just don't say anything, buddy. Like,
right? Like, what? No.
You can just not say stuff. Like, I mean, I know they think it's a compliment, because it's like, oh, no matter how much I hate this character, I still think you look good. And like, no, just don't say anything, buddy. Like, I dressed up as the character because I love the character, and then you come up to me and tell me how much you hate the character that I'm dressed up as. It's like, no. Get away from me.
Oh my gosh. There's always some story, and every time, it doesn't matter what the story is. It's just like, really? Like, what?
Yes.
You didn't think about it before it came out of your mouth, like, that, hey, is this a good idea for me to say or to type?
They genuinely think it's a compliment. It's but like I said, for the most part, people are really nice. I've gotten, like, especially at Katsucon this year and MagFest this year. No, actually, no, Katsucon, because I dressed up as Rose at Katsucon. So many people came up to me and were like, your character deserved better, or that your character, like, they did your character so dirty. And I'm just like, thank you for saying these to me. I wish Kelly was here to hear it, because I feel like it'll be really nice for her to know that a lot of people support her and love her character.
Absolutely. Well, Jireh, we have come to the end of this podcast episode, and for people that have made it to the end with us, for them to find you online, what are some of the best places to do so?
You can find me at at Jireh Lee Cosplay on Instagram. That is JIREHLEE Cosplay at Instagram. That's the best way to find me and my cosplay.
Awesome. So I will make sure to have the link in the show notes for everyone to be able to click on and give you a follow and check out all of your cosplay and see what you are going to come up with in the future, along with your Last Jedi Rose, or not Last Jedi Rose, your Rise of Skywalker Rose in the future.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, crossing fingers. But I wanted to say thank you so much for your time and coming on to talk to me about your fandoms and the stuff that you love.
And thank you for listening, because thank you so much for letting me talk about my loves and my fandoms. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Tales from the Fandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.